So when you say someone is not guilty, do you always 100% believe that? Or have you ever taken a case where you're like, think this one's probably guilty, but I'm gonna razzle dazzle it?
I don't like to think of it as razzle dazzle. I mean, I don't. No. The answer is no. I normally don't make pronouncements one way or the other about the guilt or innocence of my client because it doesn't matter to me. I don't really care. I care about the Constitution. I care about whether or not the government got their job right.
Somebody gonna cue me, or do I cue myself?
Cue yourself.
Okay. This is Huge Jam. I know, listeners, I say that every week, but this time I actually really mean it. We are live with Let's Talk Off Camera, and today's guest is the guy you want to call if you're in trouble and your life is on the line. Jan,
Yes.
Just spoiler alert, everyone. In case I ever get in trouble, I have a little private stash of funds to retain this guy. Because this is my guy. This is my guy. I'm going nowhere else. Yeah, you know him. His name is Alan Jackson. He's the elite high-stakes closer who first made history by... Jan, did you know he was a prosecutor?
I did.
I remember it like it was yesterday. I was first introduced to him during the Phil Spector trial.
Yes.
I watched him. He is amazing. He was a star prosecutor. Now he's a star defense attorney. The world can't stop watching from, of course, the Karen Reed trial.
Which you watched every
Watched
second.
every second, all three of them. Most recently, he was named as the attorney for Nick Reiner, which he's just stepped away, left the case. Here's my big question. I want to get to him right away.
Yeah.
I just want to know the psychological pivot from prosecution to seeing that, like, can he just jump back into prosecutorial mode? Because, you know, during the third Karen Reed trial, the prosecutor was a former defense attorney. Oh. So I was like, what kind of like mental gymnastics have to go on? That's what I want to know.
Let's ask him.
Should we get to him right away?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's do it. He's got, by the way, this guy, I'm looking at him right now.
Charming.
He's from Texas, so he's like Texas charming. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he's got that big Texas energy.
Yeah, he's well lit. He's got a whole background going on.
He's in a GQ model session. This like gorgeous office with like sexy lighting. And look at you, Albert. You've got a Boba Fett mask behind your head.
Right next to me.
So scary.
This man shows up to an off-camera podcast with a beautiful set. It's amazing.
It's incredible.
All right, well, let's talk to him.
All right, let's get to him. Please welcome, everyone, Alan Jackson.
Hi,
Mr.
Kelly.
Jackson, welcome to our humble podcast. Do I call you Mr.
God.
Jackson? Do I call you Alan? What would you prefer?
Alan, AJ, whatever you want. It's all good.
AJ.
It's all good. Look at this. Look at this crew. This is like the A team. I love it.
Oh, yeah. Well, this is the only team we got. AJ.
I love it.
I love AJ.
I know. I'm an AJ too. That's very exciting.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, it's funny. I never, ever asked anybody, ever. I've never asked anybody to call me AJ, but for whatever reason, just through, I don't know, osmosis, something, everybody who gets to know me just eventually ends up dropping my name from Alan Jackson just to AJ. So it's sort of stuck.
You're like the J-Lo of law.
I don't have the moves.
So I was talking to Jan about this before, and I want to know how you went from. So I kind of know because you ran for the district attorney position in LA County, and you didn't win, which to me seems crazy. It doesn't seem right.
Well, there's a lot to that, a lot to unpack.
It's very political. It's very political.
2012. It can be a very political conversation. So I'm a Republican. That's not a secret. Republican from Texas running against a female Democrat from Los Angeles. There was a quite a hill to climb. She was a great candidate. She's a terrific person. Jackie Lacey is a lovely, lovely person. We ran actually a pretty broad-based campaign. So we ran in the general election against, I think there was 8 or 9 of us in the election, and it went to a runoff just between me and Jackie. And Jackie won fair and square. And I knew at that time when I ran, I knew that I was either going to I was either going to run the office or I was going to leave the office. I had sort of touched all the bases at the DA's office that I had set out to touch. I had done all the work that I really wanted to do at the DA's office, and I thought now is the time for a chapter change. And I really did deeply. I did not want to be a politician, but I wanted to run the LA County DA's office. It was very near and dear to my heart. It's still very near and dear to my heart. Many of my friends are still there.
Do they call you all the time for advice?
No, not anymore. Especially the younger generation. There's a whole new generation of folks that have moved up and through the DA's office, and I'm still very, very close to a lot of the elder statesmen, as it were, the folks that are at the supervisory echelon. But the youngsters, we never cross paths, and so they want to get a scalp from me as much as anybody. So
Right.
It's always a good fight. I find that this particular office to be highly ethical, exceptional lawyers, and they put me through my paces quite often. But I try to return the favor.
When you go up against a young up and comer head to head, do you see a future Alan Jackson? Is there somebody? Have you ever poached anyone to work for you out of the prosecutor's office?
We have. There have been some great lawyers at the DA's office who have ultimately worked in my office, and it was through those relationships that we built, trying cases against each other or adjacent to each other. And I've learned I keep my ear to the ground quite a bit in terms of who's at the office, who the rising stars at the office. So it's a great batch to be able to pick from. So yeah, we've had some crossover.
So when
Nobody's ever left my firm to go work for the DA's office, though. So I'll say that.
Yeah, I'm sure. It seems. I'm going to be honest. It seems like a thankless job. It seems like a ton of work. You seem to be chronically under-resourced.
Right.
It's my sister-in-law was a prosecutor in Florida for a time, and it was very stressful and it was trying. It really, I think it breaks your spirit.
It's also the best place if you want to be a trial lawyer and you want to know what it is to learn sort of trial by fire. That is the place to go. Go to the DA's office or the public defender's office. Go to an office that is a government office that's institutionalized in terms of it's rote training. They will train you very, very quickly, very fast. You have to learn very quickly how to get into a courtroom and how to do the basic function of a trial lawyer. You walk in. You have to know how to address a judge. You have to know where to stand. You have to know what protocol is. You have to know how to open a case up, opening statements. You have to know how to cross-examine folks. So all of those things there is a lot of learning that goes into that. A lot of OJT on the job training. There's no job better than learning from the DA's office. I feel like I'm a far better lawyer today as a defense lawyer, having been through 18. I wasn't there a minute. I was there a long time, 18 years. So it really was a fabulous training ground for me.
I have a couple of Nick Reiner questions, and I'm not sure what you can answer and what you can't answer. But before we get into that, when you were prosecuting Phil Spector,
right.
Can you take me through mentally what you thought every time you saw him, and particularly his hair on the
I was just going to, if you didn't finish the question that way, I was going to finish it for you. I thought about his hair. What wig is he going to wear today?
It was fascinating.
Yeah. Phil was he was a character. Like we tried the case in downtown LA, just adjacent to Hollywood. There is no Hollywood story quite like Phil Spector. He's bigger than life. I was telling someone today, as a matter of fact, I was in court earlier this morning. I was having a conversation with a younger lawyer who wasn't around for the Phil Spector case and didn't really know who Phil was. And I said, at the time, I don't know if this is still true, but at the time I was told that Phil Spector was the most played producer in the history of radio at his zenith, at the top of his career. And he had the song that, at least at the time, back in 2007 through 2009, when I was trying those cases, the research indicated that a single song that was the most played song in the history of the invention of radio was his song that he wrote and produced called Unchained Melody, which we all, of course, could sing in our sleep. So he was a big deal. I mean, so walking in and prosecuting somebody that sort of has been weaved into the fabric, the DNA of our society. I said this to the jury when I sort of needed to address the elephant in the room. Can you sit in judgment of someone who wrote the soundtrack to your youth, to your life? And that was the challenge in the Phil Spector case, is that once you have a high gravity case like that, can you, the jurors, sit in judgment of someone that you feel like you almost know? That's the problem with celebrity cases, is you feel like you know the person who's sitting in the defendant's seat. And for a prosecutor, it's extremely challenging. And for a defense attorney, you also have to make sure that you don't get people in the jury box who have an issue or a bone to pick with your celebrity client.
So I just want to briefly ask you about Nick Reiner. You were, I guess you were on the case then on, was it January 7th? You withdrew from the case. Can you give us any insight into that? What was your reasoning? I'm sure you can't provide that, but I'm just curious. Like,
sure,
it seemed like you were there, then you weren't.
Yeah, everybody's got that same looming question, and I am compelled because of legal standards and ethical obligations. There's certain things I simply can't divulge, Kelly, in terms of why there was a change in counsel, why we stepped away and the public defender's office stepped in. But I will reiterate what I said in the press conference, which is my team, me personally, and my team remain completely and utterly committed to Nick's best interests. We always will be committed to his best interests. I want nothing but the best for him, and I want him to get the most robust defense that he possibly can get, and I know he will in the hands of the public defender's office.
And can you explain to me what kind of defense a person would launch in what seems and again, I'm just an observer of what I've read in the newspaper, what seems to be indefensible?
First of all, there's very little in the law that's indefensible, and there's a reason for that, because I never approach a case like I'm just defending an individual. Mm-hmm. Every time I approach a case on the defense side, I walk into the case, and my entire team, they're all trained to walk into a case knowing full well that we're defending something bigger than an individual. We're defending the Constitution. We're defending an idea. We're defending the idea, the foundation on which this country was built in terms of its justice system. We don't live in a system in which you sort of ready, fire, aim. You think somebody did something, so you throw them in jail, and then somewhere down the road you might give them a trial. That's not the way our system works. You have to, if you're going to do the almost unthinkable, which is to take someone's liberty, and I take that very seriously. That is a God-given right. That is not a man-made right. That is a God-given right. The liberty and the pursuit of happiness, it's built into the fabric of our country. If the government is going to do almost the unthinkable, which is to take away your liberty, right? And there are certain circumstances in which it's absolutely appropriate. I don't have a problem with that if it's done perfectly. So I know this is a long-winded answer to a short question, but this question does bring about kind of bigger, broad brushstrokes. Mm-hmm. I don't worry about who the person is. So the word indefensible never comes up, because it's completely defensible, no matter who the person is, if the government doesn't get it right. And in certain circumstances, there are mental health issues. I'm not talking about Nick's case, just in general. Like you said, sort of the call of the question was, what are some defenses that are available to citizens, just any citizen? One thing we don't do is we don't punish the sick for being sick. It's no different than having cancer. It's no different than having epilepsy. If someone has an epileptic seizure and they go unconscious, and God forbid they're in a traffic accident and something happens and people lose their lives, we don't punish that as a crime because someone had epilepsy and had a seizure. They can't help it. It's a mental issue. It's a physical issue. The same with mental illness. We don't punish in this country. We're very civilized. We try to be civilized. We try to be the most civilized country on the planet. And part of that civilization is, and being civilized is, making sure that we only punish criminal conduct that was where there's a mens rea, where there's an intent element. And if you have a mental illness that such that you cannot form an intent, you don't understand the character and quality of your conduct, et cetera, then the system is built to accommodate that and to address that. And that is the not guilty by reason of insanity defense. So in that circumstance, a lot of people have talked about it, Kelly. And what does that mean? Oh, does that mean you just go to a psychiatrist for 10 minutes and then you're released? No, it doesn't mean that at all. The system is built to treat that. You go to a state mental hospital. It is a lockdown facility. You can't go anywhere. You are incarcerated in that facility for as long as it takes, if ever, you become well again. That sickness or that illness is resolved.
And is that how, like, would what you just said to me, is that how you would make an opening statement for not guilty by reason of insanity defense? Not his, but A.
So the way it works in California is you go through, if you enter an NGI plea, which is not guilty by reason of insanity, the procedure is as follows. You enter the plea. You still go through a guilt phase, which is just a standard trial on whether or not the defendant is responsible for and legally liable for the death of somebody else or the conduct in question. Only if the jury comes back unanimously as guilty, then you go to a penalty phase, which that penalty phase can include an NGI. In other words, the jury then decides, separate and apart in a bifurcated proceeding, the same jury decides whether or not you were sane or insane at the time of the conduct for which you were convicted.
That's interesting. I did not realize that. So you have to go through an entire trial.
It's two trials.
Two
entire trials.
Right.
Correct.
Wow, I did not realize that at all. So when you say someone is not guilty, do you always 100% believe that? Or have you ever taken a case where you're like, I think this one's probably guilty, but I'm gonna razzle dazzle it?
I don't like to think of it as razzle dazzle. I mean, I don't. No. The answer is no. I normally don't make pronouncements one way or the other about the guilt or innocence of my client because it doesn't matter to me. I don't really care. I care about the Constitution. I care about whether or not the government got their job right. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can. I've talked about this before. People talk about wrongful convictions. When I say, Kelly, if I said wrongful conviction, what does that mean to you? Just that phrase, wrongful conviction.
A person that was convicted and it was wrong.
Right. Okay. So most people would say the innocent, right? They're factually innocent, yet they were convicted. That's a wrongful conviction. That is certainly a type of wrongful conviction. Another type of wrongful conviction is the person's completely guilty, and yet they're convicted based on government misconduct.
Something other than the evidence.
Brady wasn't turned over. Brady evidence exculpatory evidence wasn't turned over. Corners were cut on certain evidentiary issues. There were bad rulings by a judge. There were bad arguments by a DA. Whatever. In other words, or investigators cut corners and suppressed evidence on purpose. There are corners that are cut in courtrooms every single day in the United States. And my argument as a defense attorney is, like I said before, not to beat a dead horse, but if the government's going to take away your liberty, if they're going to walk in and put handcuffs on you and tell you where you're going to live, what you're going to eat, when you get up in the morning, when you go to bed at night, who's going to be your cellmate, and they control your life from now until then, they better get every single bit of that investigation correct. And I don't mean generally right. I mean perfect. That's my standard. Beyond any and all reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. That's the standard that I hold the government to. And so that's what I mean by wrongful convictions. They happen all the time because the government doesn't always get it right. So I don't really care when a client comes to me and says, I need you to defend me for XYZ. My immediate my immediate countenance is, okay, let's look at the facts, let's look at the discovery, look at the investigation, and then let's start testing what the investigators did. Let's investigate the investigators. And that's where I start.
Okay, we have to take this is I'm so fascinated. We have to take a commercial break right now. Please stick around. We are live with Alan Jackson. Don't go anywhere, everyone. Jan, I am shooketh. Albert,
You are.
shooketh.
It's a big moment.
Okay, we are back, everyone. If you're just joining us, Alan Jackson is here, criminal defense attorney, one of the great legal minds of our time. And joining him now is Karen Reed. Hi, Karen. How are you?
Well, Kelly, thank you. How are you?
We've been so fascinated by you and Alan and this case that I was telling Alan before. I watched every trial. I watched all the documentaries. I listened to all the podcasts. So, Alan, I'm going to start with. Well, no, let me start with Karen.
Yeah.
Karen, did you reach out to Alan Jackson? How did the two of you come together?
I have a short answer and a longer one that I was just explaining to Alan today that I don't think Alan knew. But shortly after I was upcharged, I came across an article and then I saw an interview on TV involving Jake Tapper, whose father is a retired doctor, but had a client that Jake believed was wrongfully convicted. And right after I was charged with murder, I want to say early fall of 2022, this former patient of Tapper Sr., his conviction was overturned. And then I just caught up on the story because I wanted to talk to Alan about it. And now I'm learning that he's free. This man's last name is Rice. So this is mid 2022. I'm reading about this with Jake Tapper, and Jake Tapper is saying if the number of incarcerees in the country is just over 1 million, and very, very, very conservatively, there's an estimate in the ether that 1% of those incarcerees are wrongfully convicted. That's 10,000 people are in prison that don't belong in prison. And I want to say Jake said in this interview, and I apologize if I'm misquoting him, I thought he said there's research that shows the number is 7 to double digits, which means you're talking about 70 to hundreds of thousands of people. And I realized I needed that this could actually be happening, that I am being wrongfully prosecuted and that it happens all the time. And it's not a fluke, and it's not going to get righted by someone else. I have to do it. And I reached out to a former colleague. I had left my job, and he said, in lieu of financial resources, which were dwindling for me, try calling the Criminal Justice Institutes at the local universities. And I called many. One called me back, and it was the director of the program at Harvard. And I was explaining to him, I need this technical data. I can't get any. There must be cell phone data that can prove my innocence. There's got to be something. And he said, you need the legal motions. There's a lot of legwork that goes behind trying to obtain this evidence. And there was a case not too long ago in Massachusetts, so it's Massachusetts code, and the attorney was Alan Jackson, and the client was Kevin Spacey. So I looked up the case, and on a whim, reached out. I emailed Alan, and Alan emailed me back about 90 minutes later, and I just said I needed his help.
And so, Alan, take over that now. You are presented with the. Do you look at the evidence? Do you look at the arrest report? What do you see when you talk to Karen?
The first thing I saw that was so interesting to me, the reason I responded in 90 minutes is because I saw it in about 89 minutes afterward. I responded in about a minute because she was smart, as she always is. She's very, very clever. And she put in the subject line, which is the only thing I see on my iPhone, right, when I'm checking emails, she put death of a Boston cop, I think, Karen. Is that what it was? Murder of a Boston cop. And obviously that's going to catch my attention. So I opened the email and it was extremely well written, which I appreciated. I get a ton of emails a day. And the first thing I look at, I got to filter some way. And if it's poorly written from the beginning, it's like, well, okay. If you're not going to take the time to actually write something significant, then I may not need to read it. It was very well written, and it laid out her situation. And all she said at the beginning was, I need motion work. Like, do you have copies of the motions that you used in Massachusetts to uncover some of the cell phone data in Kevin's case? And I immediately said, yeah, let's get on a call. Let's talk about it. Yes, I've got all that motion work. And we got on a call, cutting to the chase a little while later. While we were on the call, I said, email me some of the evidence, including the injuries. And she did. And there was a photograph of John O'Keefe's arm. And my immediate reaction was, I think I said, are you fucking kidding me? Like, this is bullshit. I've seen a lot of injuries. I've seen thousands and thousands of autopsies, autopsy reports, autopsy photographs. This is not from a car. This looks like it's from a dog or an animal. And that's what sparked all of our interest. I actually called over to my partner, Elizabeth Little, whom you also know from the trial. Elizabeth, come over here. She walks over. I said, look at this. And she goes, oh, yeah, that's bullshit. That's a dog. And she walked out of the office. It took that long for us to understand, like, something does not pass the smell test.
It didn't pass the smell test. And that's what I was going to say. Like,
right.
When something seems, is that how you judge when you're on the right case or the right track, when something just doesn't pass the sniff test?
Yeah, well, we pressure test everything, as Karen knows. I don't need perfection in my case to defend a case, as we talked about earlier, because my client oftentimes is the Constitution. Most of the time, my client, at least a co-client, is the Constitution. So I don't need everything to be perfect. I just need the police to be perfect. And I knew the police were not perfect in this case, because immediately they're saying this was caused by a car, by an SUV, a 6,000-pound SUV. What are the other injuries? So that just opened up the layers of the onion, and we started to pressure test everything. And Kelly, every single thing we started to look at started to collapse under any scrutiny whatsoever. And I don't mean most things. I mean everything, down to statements that were attributed to Karen that never showed up in a police report, evidence that was supposedly found at the location, which didn't get there until after the car was in the police custody. I mean, every single bit of evidence pointed directly to Karen's innocence, not her guilt. And so this was, I mean, I was going to say this was a layup. This was anything but a layup. This was a half-court shot because it was just so difficult. We're going up against the juggernaut of the Commonwealth. But to answer your question, it's not because I didn't defend her because it was simple and all the evidence pointed toward her innocence. I would have defended her no matter what. But once we started to pressure test the whole case, it all pointed to her innocence. I knew she didn't do it. I knew within the first 10 seconds she didn't do it.
Karen, what did you think about sort of this? The Karen Reed effect, and how people really started rallying behind you and showing up and standing in front of the courthouse, and then by the time they were not permitted to stand in front of the courthouse, still being like very vigilant. And what did that hold you up in some way? Did that make you feel like any less terrified? Because I would think you would be terrified through every step of this trial, all the trials.
I still am in awe that it even happened, that there was this groundswell, and it made me question my own empathy, which I've always considered myself somewhat of an empath, but now I realize I'm not, because I've seen injustices play out or other problems in society, and I wouldn't be there in the rain, in the snow, or ever. I mean, now I'd like to think I would behave differently. It absolutely buoyed me I've said before, especially, it really started picking up halfway to trial in the middle of 2023. It was something to look forward to in the middle of the anxiety and nerves that we're going to get off the highway and we're going to start seeing pink and American flags, and people were every day throwing gifts or a box of donuts or cards or money. It gave me something to look forward to, and it helped me tolerate, or more than tolerate, it helped me get through without falling apart, the embarrassment of the whole thing. It's incredibly humiliating, and I had to do it twice. And I knew there were people that didn't care how the state was trying to humiliate me. They cared that I was being wrongfully prosecuted. It buoyed me every single day.
Was it only 2 trials? Why do I think it was 3 trials?
Because I'm in the middle of a third.
Did I invent?
She's in the middle.
Yes,
of the third.
that's it. Yes, that's it. Yes. Okay, I knew yes. So a lot. I watched. Like I said, everything on this case, and a lot. There was a lot of chatter. And I can say this because I'm a woman who works on television. So I want you to know that I say this with the institutional knowledge of a person on TV. You were criticized for having a lack of emotion during the trial. What do you have to say about that?
I wasn't probably as expressive as people would have expected me to be. And the only explanation I have is I had been living this for over 2 years by the time this really picked up, which was at the beginning of the first trial. And it wasn't just points of every day. It was all day and half the nights for 2 years. And I had to strap myself into a mindset and stay there. I could not ebb and flow with the government. And what happened, Alan said something to me early on, Kelly, I would say within a month of meeting him. And every once in a while, I tried not to because he was doing so much. I tried not to emotionally ask Alan for help to get through this, but sometimes I just couldn't help it. And I worried about trial. And oh my God, this is going to be a horrible day when they play me screaming and swearing. And Alan said, there will be bad moments. It will be horrible. It will suck. You will want to dig a hole under you and crawl into it. It will suck. But we will come right back and punch them right back. And that's what you have to look forward to, that for every down moment, you will get picked up. And our side and what we're doing will double the negativity of the prosecution. And it was absolutely true. I kept telling myself that every time the prosecution directly examined one of their witnesses, I said, all right, just get through this, and then it'll be our turn, and our side will make so much sense.
She had to sit there like a statue. I warned her, you have to sit there like a statue. Kelly, remember, I don't know if you do remember, but if you watched the trial, there was a lot made of this. There was one moment in 2 full trials over the course of 6 months in trial every single day. There's one moment when Karen allowed herself the grace and the moment to basically roll her eyes or smirk. And Karen, remind me, what was the she remembers this when Judge Cannone looked down and goes, "What are you laughing at?
It was the
something's
verdict.
funny."
It was the verdict form.
The verdict form. When we're arguing over the verdict form, right? And the verdict form was a complete and absolute disaster. So I'm up there fighting about the verdict form, and the judge is disagreeing with me.
It was the most confusing verdict form. I mean, it seemed deliberately obtuse.
Karen counted it. In that first verdict form, there were on 2 pages of verdicts or potential verdicts, there were 3 spots for not. There were like 8 or 9 spots for guilty, and 3 spots for not guilty. For every place there was guilty, should have been a not guilty right next to it, but there wasn't. So I'm throwing a fit and doing my thing, and we're arguing back and forth. And the judge says, "No, this is how we always do it, and that's it. You're done." And Karen allows herself a tiny, you can play back the video, tiny smirk and an eye roll. And Judge Cannone pounced on her, immediately. I'm trying to watch my words. She is a sitting judge, and I want to be respectful. But that's why I gave Karen the lectures at the beginning of the trial. Show no emotion. It was me.
Also, I was going to say, like, you are going to, just from personal experience, not in trial, but just living in, on TV. If you don't show any emotion, you are emotionless and cold. But if you show emotion, you are a hysterical woman.
Right.
So
And
I
Kelly,
feel
there was
like
no winning.
That was a no win.
People, maybe women in particular, I guess men as well, some are just never going to like you. It's the sound of my voice, or it's the look on my face, or it's that I have confidence going into this. You cannot win. I will not get 100% of the population to like my feel. And I was in 7th grade once. Things haven't changed much. You cannot aim to have everyone like you. It will not happen.
I want to talk about the cross-examination of Michael Proctor and how,
Otherwise known as my favorite moment ever.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of a masterclass. I think it's everybody's favorite moment of any trial ever. It's when I was passing through the kitchen and I sort of stopped in my tracks. It was like a moment where you just sort of stop and you're like, wait, what? And so it's interesting what happens, in the second trial when suddenly he's like a ghost.
Karen, why don't you take the first shot at this? I've got a lot to say about that, but I want to hear Karen's perspective on this. Because there was a lot back and forth. What I'm teeing up is the discussions, Karen, that we had, because there was a ton, Kelly, a ton of behind the scenes, a ton of discussion.
Should we call him? Should we not?
Absolutely. Oh my God! And just like you were talking about, there's no winning sometimes. Right. There was going to be no win, whichever way we decided. Lots of people were saying, yeah, you have to call him, and lots of pundits were saying, there's no way, the empty chair is better. So, Karen, why don't you, as the referee, tee that up?
We were evenly split on the legal team. We made, we made Michael Proctor a ghost. We could have called Michael Proctor if we wanted to. Then Michael Proctor is an average guy with a tie on and maybe the same brand of watch as one of the jurors. And he finds a way, with Hank Brennan's help, to talk about his children and that he's a dad and a husband. And he can't possibly be capable of these things, and he did them out of anger and loathing for what he was claiming I did. That why allow this man any forum to excuse away his behavior? He's a liar. We had all the evidence that we needed against him. Not everything, because some of it we were hamstrung by the court, but the evidence was out there. I certainly didn't miss being in the same room a second time with Michael Proctor.
We also had a strategic, nothing we did wasn't highly, highly thoughtful, and we tested our own evidence as well and our own strategies as well. But we knew that the text messages needed to get in front of the jury, the second jury. And the prosecution was trying as mightily as they could to defraud the jury into believing that Michael Proctor was something that he wasn't. They did not want those text messages in front of the jury. No, it's not relevant. You can't get it in. There's evidentiary blockades for it, blah, blah, blah. So we came up with another idea, which is, oh, wait a minute, hang on. The text message has two sides. Actually, in this case, it has multiple sides.
He was texting people.
Correct. Human beings who are subject to the jurisdiction of the court, and they can be subpoenaed, and they can come in and they can testify. And so that's the direction we went. Oh, you're gonna move your pawn. We're gonna move our rook. So we called the other side of the text messages and we got him in, and we didn't need Proctor. And then he becomes, as he was in my closing argument, he becomes the ogre under the bridge, the nameless, faceless monster who did all this, and every bit of it was true, and it worked beautifully.
We have to take another commercial break. I'm like dying because I have so many, I want to follow up. I want to put a pin in it right there. We're going to take a commercial break. We'll be right back with Alan Jackson and Karen Reed. Stick around. guys, we're back with Karen Reed and Alan Jackson. We were talking about how you got those text messages, Alan, into the trial, and I want to know, like, because I saw the documentary and I saw the amount of preparation that goes into working on a trial such as this. But did that come to you in the middle of the night? Did you sit up and say, "Wait a minute, there's another side to text messages. Why don't we just read the other side?" Or was it just in the moment, in the think tank room, in the Starbucks?
My memory, Karen will help me with this because she's got a better memory than I do. But my memory is we were in the car. We were in the SUV driving from court to the hotel after court one day. And the discussion was, we were roundtabling it. David was there. Bob was there. Liza, Karen, me. We were all in the car together. And somehow that light bulb went off for us. I can't take credit for it. I don't remember if it was me, but somebody said, these other folks, some of them, we knew some of them were out of state. And so we started talking about that. Well, wait a minute. Has anybody thought about trying to subpoena these folks to track them down? All we had was, in some instances, all we had was a phone number. And we weren't going to get anything from the prosecution. They weren't being helpful or forthcoming, and certainly Proctor wasn't going to tell us who they were. So we ended up getting our investigator to dig in, backtrack based on phone numbers, who were the individual subscribers, and then we took it from there. So it was a little bit of a light bulb moment, but it did take a minute to go from genesis to execution.
But imagine that this is the lead investigator making incredibly biased comments about me, and we have to hire someone to find out whom he's discussing this with. What if it's another investigator or a Canton police officer? The prosecution was aware of these messages, and they weren't proactive in closing the loop on who's on the other side. I had to pay to have someone go look up phone records and find out who they belonged to, and that the government wouldn't provide that.
There were truths that they desperately did not want. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem. When you have a government agency who's prosecuting a case, the truth should always drive the prosecution. That's it, period. There is no caveat or but. The truth drives the prosecution. And in this case, it wasn't. They didn't want the truth.
So tell me, Karen, like you're found not guilty on, all of the major charges. What is life like for you in the immediate aftermath? Is there a come down? Are you in a state of shock? Are you in a state of fight or flight? Take me through your life, immediately following. What happens? How do you transition back to normal life?
There's just been this void that's slowly going away. I can't even say it's getting filled, but it's going away. That I had the same MO for 4 years, not some days high, it was the same intensity. When Alan was just describing how we decided, I think it was you, Alan, how we decided to get the text messages in, we had moments with evidence like this every week that it's this adrenaline that propels you, and then it just stops. And I've actually briefly explored trying to go back to Fidelity where I worked before. And for lots of reasons, number one, I don't think I can ride the commuter rail in peace anymore, but I just don't know what to do with myself, and I'm figuring it out. But it's surreal, and it is a come down, and not in a good way. It's I'm incredibly grateful. There is some shock. I don't know that it's quite completely hit me.
Have you been able to mourn? I feel like you've never had the opportunity to mourn.
I appreciate that question. I did not go to John's funeral. There was a restraining order taken out immediately against me by his family. I have such amazing friends and family. I mourned with them. I had friends, my best friends, that I traveled with many times with John, and we all, we were in different places together and spent weekends together, and My family had met John. They knew John when we were 24 and dated. I mourned with them, and we reminisced together, and we talked about John, and we cried about John, and I mourned. Short of going to the funeral, I went to church. I went to my church with my family, and I prayed for John. And like a normal person with a belief system would do. So don't feel sorry for me that I didn't grieve. I absolutely did. I had nothing but time on my hands, and I absolutely grieved John, which is part of the reason why when autopsy photos were shown, I had seen them hundreds of times. I'm trying to piece together what happened to him, so I have to look at them. But I grieved, and thanks to my family, my parents, and my friends, and my faith, I passed through grieving like an average person would.
Do you think you'll move? Will you remain in Massachusetts? Do you feel safe there?
I don't. But I also don't want to sound naive that these problems don't exist with law enforcement. Maybe worse, but we've waged a war here. There has been, we try to enumerate them, but the number changes every day. There's the commissioner of the Boston Police, whom we've had Alan's waged a public battle with, all coming down to lying by the government. Many members of local law enforcement in Canton and the state police that, no, I don't see myself driving in Massachusetts because I worry when you get behind the wheel, it gives the government too much leeway to pin something on you. So I don't feel comfortable in the state. I don't like driving by the Canton exit. I hate seeing a state trooper on the side of the road. I don't know that I could live like this for the rest of my life. So I'd like to get out of Massachusetts.
Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, that's got to be tough, Jan. Don't you think?
I would think it's impossible.
And obviously, I'm assuming, and I don't know what you can say or what you can't say, but I'm assuming you have no contact with John O'Keefe's family.
No, I don't. I don't wish to have any contact with his family. His family knows I was never remotely abusive to John or any member of the family. I cared for him. I was generous with him. And they've had more than enough opportunity to see what everyone else sees. I mourned. Mourn's too strong of a word, but I've moved past the O'Keefes and that life that I had, and I'm just going forward now. I don't wish to cross paths with them. I'm forced to now because of the civil case, but I'd like not to see them and just keep moving forward, or even communicate with them.
Do you think part of their reaction is that they have obviously also been deeply traumatized in a different way, and sometimes, it's you reach for something, anything to hang on to, even if it's engaging with you in some way. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do not pretend to have had the loss that they have had. John was someone I dated, and contrary to how it's been portrayed, I did not live with him. I had my own house that I spent a decent amount of time at, but John and I dated for 2 years. He was not my son or brother, so I don't understand what they've gone through and how it's made them think.
Right. And we can't try to. We don't try to. They're going through their process the same as everybody else, but we don't try to understand what they're going through and who's going through what. So that is a question for the O'Keefe family, and we will always show respect for their process. But we're also in the middle of a lawsuit where they're blaming Karen for this circumstance, and they sat in the same courtroom everybody else did, Kelly. They sat in the exact same courtroom and saw the exact same evidence and had access, as a matter of fact, more access, some would suggest, to the government's the witnesses and to the government's evidence. And they have to know what the results of this, the presentation of this evidence are. So it's mind-boggling that we're even here. But it's a free country. I ask. I've got a buddy of mine who's a civil lawyer, and sometimes I'll say the unthinkable as a lawyer. Oh, do you think so and so can sue so and so for such and such? And his answer is always the same.
Alan,
anybody can sue anybody for anything.
Alan, Karen, I want to thank you both for being here. We are out of time, but I want to encourage people. You've got a podcast that's coming out soon, right?
Yes.
Yep.
The two of you
do.
Together.
We
the
do.
Reed Files.
The Reed Files with Karen Reed and Alan Jackson. That will be hitting platforms soon enough in the coming weeks, and we're very excited about it.
Nice.
It's still in the making, but we're super excited. And I want to thank you for the platform. We can only have these kind of conversations off camera.
Yes, thank you, Kelly.
Exactly. Thanks so much
is
for
good
being
stuff.
here. Can't wait to talk with you all off camera next week. Bye, everyone. Let's Talk Off Camera with Kelly Ripa is a production of Melojo Productions. From Melojo, our team is Kelly Ripa, Mark Consuelos, Albert Bianchini, Jan Chalet, Seth Gronquist, Ross Therian, Devin Schneider, Michael Halprin, Julia Desch, and Team Radio Andy, Lisa Mantaneo, Scott Marlowe, Jake Getz.